Welcome to HarmonyTALK, a podcast about dreamers and doers. Here people from all walks of life tell us about their dreams and the moment they knew there was no turning back as they went from dreaming to doing. This podcast is sponsored by A.M. Skyer, a third-generation family insurance business started in 1920. My name is Greg Frigoletto, your host for this episode. For today's episode of HarmonyTALK, we are delighted to have a conversation with Izze Stein. Izze is a New York City-based singer-songwriter who recently completed her first international tour to promote Questions, her debut album. On her recent tour, she performed in front of audiences in places like Austin, Houston, San Francisco, LA, Nashville, and Stockholm, Sweden. Izze has also appeared on Studio 40, Good Day Sacramento, and Today in Nashville. In New York City, she has performed at the Apollo Theater and Birdland Jazz Club. And this fall, she was the featured musical artist for the Manhattan Short Film Festival, where her music was shared with over 100,000 film lovers in 500 cities across 6 continents. Izze, welcome to HarmonyTALK.
Thank you for having me, Greg. It's awesome to be here.
It is awesome to have you. And just for those folks that might not know, the Manhattan Short Film Festival is a huge, big deal. And you being picked as a featured artist is amazing. And maybe if you could, to get started, tell us, what was that selection process like?
So my family has been going to the Manhattan Short Festival. It plays in my hometown, New Jersey. And they've been going for years. And every year they're like, oh, these films are so great. And then I finally went last year with them. And I was like, wow, like these films are really high quality and amazing. And they're from all over the world. In the breaks, they have this featured musical artist and they play this person's songs and they feature their social media handles and everything. And I was like, maybe I should apply to be the featured musical artist. And so I just sent in an application about 6 months ago. And then I was selected, which was really wild because I imagine there were a lot of people that applied because it's a global festival. So that was really an amazing surprise from this summer.
So the exposure that you've probably gained from that is incredible and perfect timing with an album out. So what an opportunity for you to have your name and music splashed out there in such a magnificent way. Now, if we could, just to remind everybody and our audience and our listeners, this is a podcast that looks to inspire by sharing stories like your story, Izze, that demonstrate that dreams can become a reality, even when at times there are obstacles to overcome. In other words, dreamers become doers. Now, on the musical side of things, I'm going to want to go back into the beginning of your story, but maybe I'd like to start at a different place. And in particular, when I was preparing for this and I was researching, all there is to know about Izze, of course, I was going to turn to where I would be able to stream some music, which, by the way, I loved all of it. But on iTunes, your album, Question, is categorized as R&B and soul. And I know that there are artists who at times claim that they don't like to be labeled and they don't like to necessarily be tied to a genre. iTunes lists you as R&B. How do you feel about a label or a genre, and does that matter to you? Does that offend you? Are you happy to be representing a genre? Where do you fall with that?
I think it's great. I love diving into multiple genres, but, I would rather be listed as R&B soul than listed as heavy metal, because then the people who expect to find heavy metal and listen to my music are going to be like, that's not what I want. And also, R&B, when I sang at the Apollo Theater, I really was humbled by being in the space where so many R&B legends have performed. A lot of my favorite music from the 60s and 70s and all of the eras of R&B, I just respect the deep feeling and interesting harmony of that genre. It's honestly an honor to be included, at least on iTunes, in such an incredible genre that has inspired me so much. And as far as soul goes, I would say that all of my music, because this album has an R&B focus, it draws from a lot of the 90s and 2000s R&B people, women, really. Alicia Keys, Erykah Badu, Amy Winehouse. But with my other music, I would say it all falls under the category of soul. I always write from the pits of my soul. and I think there's a lot of different expressions of soul. But I'm happy for this album to be packaged in the R&B section of soul.
I think a great point you just made is that all types of music should be an expression of soul. So every music, whatever the genre is, should have soul. I think you would probably agree with that. But when you talk about R&B, and as a young artist, a young performer like you are, How did your musical influences guide you in that direction, and how old were you when that started? And tell us a little bit about your musical journey, maybe from the beginning.
Sure. So when I was very little, my mom put my brother and I in kinder music classes. I don't know if anyone listening knows about kinder music, but it's a great program. And the teacher told my mom that both my brother and I have perfect pitch. She's like, so they should definitely keep going on this music thing. And it's pretty cool that my brother and I both have perfect pitch because we do music together even today. And when we harmonize, it's like we're both just in the pocket. So they say that siblings have the most in tune frequencies for harmonizing. And I love singing with my brother and writing with him too. But anyway, so started in kinder music. Then I started taking voice lessons. I started taking piano lessons. I also danced for a very long time. And when it was time to decide about college, I went to theater camp for many years. And I was strongly considering doing musical theater as my major at school because at the time I was applying, there were a lot of these BFA programs. There still are all these BFA programs. It was a very popular thing to do to get a BFA and then move to New York and do the whole Broadway thing. So I auditioned for schools. I was accepted to University of Michigan's musical theater department, which was very shocking because everyone was saying, you're not going to get in, like nobody gets in. And then it was just incredible to have that opportunity. I was also very academic in school and I said no to Harvard. I was also accepted to Harvard, which was like a crazy other path and life that I would be living today if I went down that road. But yeah, I really strongly felt I wanted to be an artist. I studied musical theater in school. I moved to New York in 2019 and I was auditioning for Broadway shows, waking up at 6 a.m. 5 times a week, waiting online in the cold. And then Broadway closed less than a year after I moved to New York. And I took a second to regroup. And then I started singing at a few jazz clubs in the city. And I realized that I really liked the whole straight music thing. And it's funny because in high school and through college, I was doing the whole theater. I was in a lot of shows and I was studying acting and all that. But I continued to keep my music muscle alive. I sang with the jazz band in high school and I sang the national anthem for a few games. And I also performed at this big music concert we did at my high school. I performed New York State of Mind by playing piano and singing at the same time, which was the first time I'd ever done that in front of an audience. So, and then through college, I wrote a lot. I wrote musicals and I sang outside of theater, but I never saw it as my path until after COVID when I started singing in all these different jazz clubs. And then after doing the jazz cover gig scene in New York for a while, I thought, maybe I should try sharing some more of my writing that isn't in the context of a musical, but just kind of songs about my personal experiences. And once I did that, people really connected in a way that I could not have anticipated. And I thought, all right, I guess this is my path. And then what you were saying about this podcast being devoted to people who have a dream and then they start to do, for me, it was many years of knowing that I had a dream, but not knowing exactly what that dream was. And going down all the different paths, going to school for something specific, trying to sing in a bunch of jazz clubs. And it wasn't until I tried this particular thing that I realized this is my dream. And that's when I could really start doing. That's when I set into motion, getting my album recorded and then putting it out and then going on this tour. So yeah, that's my journey.
So as far back as kinder classes where you were beginning your vocal journey, it was recognized that you had the perfect pitch. So in the beginning, clearly you had the talent to do it. At some point, though, and this is what fascinates me about artistry, you have the talent to play music, to sing beautifully like you do, to write music. But then there's another side to that where it's the performance piece of it. If you could kind of describe for me, because I've never had the opportunity to perform on stage in a musical format. But as a performing artist, was it early on in your career, even before all of these experiences you had in jazz clubs? You know, you talked about going away to Michigan and you were going into it really for the theatrical piece of it. Was it the musical side of it or the performing side of it that was a bigger draw for you?
I would say it always came down to the music for me. I mean, I definitely enjoyed being in shows more that I genuinely loved the music and I loved the orchestrations and I loved the harmonies. But the performance aspect is a huge part of what I do. I mean, even going on a tour, it's all based in performance. I always wanted to be the center of attention. Like as a kid, I would both get into the center of the dance floor and just start dancing in front of everyone. And also, if we were at an event where they chose a volunteer from the audience to do something on stage. If I didn't get chosen, I would throw a fit. And my parents were like, what are we going to do with this kid? So they would like go way out of their way to like get me to be chosen for volunteer situations where I could be in front of people doing something. So I really had that need for a long time. But yeah, doing theater was a great outlet for that. I did so many shows at camp. I went to this camp called French Woods Festival. And it's kind of an amazing thing that they have set up there. They do 4 sessions, 3 weeks each. And in each session, they do over 10 shows with kids ages 7 to 18. And like you just throw up a full scale musical in 3 weeks. Everyone just miraculously learned their lines and learned their dances. And then the parents would come up and visit. And then it would always, each show was so electrically charged. But yeah, I mean, each summer I did 2 to 5 shows in the span of less than 8 weeks. So that really got me in the flow of being in front of an audience.
And, here you are coming off of really your first international tour. So you had that experience in front of an audience. And now that you've finished this first international tour as a performing artist, like strictly the singing artist side of it, talk to me a little bit about how the connection with your audience went. And I also want to know, in speaking with you now and previously, you're extremely charismatic. And even with what you've said so far, you like being in front of an audience. But is there an Izzy version that's different on stage? Are you one of those artists that something happens when you get up there that transforms you? Talk to me a little bit about the connection with your audience and what happens to Izzy when she gets on stage.
I really appreciate that question because especially in the musical theater world, I've interacted with a lot of people that are super shy in person. And then they get on stage and they're not only able to be on stage, but like this wild personality. So that's interesting. For me, I'm a very extroverted person. So what I really loved about this tour is that the job was equal parts being on stage doing music and in between in the breaks connecting with the audience. I mean, it's like if I booked a 3-hour gig. And the other thing about this tour that was fun is that each show was very unique. It's not like I had a set show that I just brought to each city. I tailored my performance and my set to the specific circumstance of the city and the room and the time I had. So if I did a 3-hour show and it was 3 sets, the 15-minute breaks in between, I would be right to the audience, connecting people, meeting new people, shaking hands, taking pictures, giving out my Instagram. And I mean, that's part of why I love performing so much is that it allows me to be in places where I can just interact with a bunch of new people and also people that there were a lot of stops where people from my life previously really rallied and showed up. And that was wonderful to be able to have a lot of people who've never seen me perform in this way see that and kind of see where I am on my journey. At my Pennsylvania stop, that's the one that's closest to where I grew up. And my 3rd grade teacher came with her husband and they're just the best. And it was just wild. I see her watching me and I'm just thinking about, wow, like you saw me when I was 9 years old. Like, did you ever think I was going to be doing this? So it's just amazing.
My hunch is she would have guessed that this was a possibility.
Maybe.
Even as far back as 3rd grade. Now, you mentioned, that as you were in each city, you kind of catered it to the city and tried to make it unique and special for that audience. But, for you, and maybe for me as well, like my initial introduction to a city was New York. And New York, if that's your benchmark, it's a very interesting place to start because of what New York is. So born on the stages and jazz clubs of New York City, that's part of how you could be described. How does performing in New York City shape your music and your style? And if you're being launched from there, is that something that you think is a great guide for you to move forward?
You're asking great questions. I appreciate the time you took to really get to know me ahead of time. So one thing I loved about doing this tour is that I was able to play with 4 different trios in different cities. So I had a Nashville trio, a Texas trio, a Northern California trio, and my New York trio. And I really feel that there were differences in the style and the energy of each of these trios. And I truly loved all 4 of them so much and for completely different reasons. So starting in New York, I would describe the New York musician to be just, I don't want to say crazy, like insane, but just like willing to do anything and just like, oh, we're going here. Okay, we're going to do this song. Okay, we're going to do it in this way. It's just like kind of all over the place. And it's exciting. The guys I play with in New York, every performance is electric. I just never know where it's going to go and everyone's having a good time. And then there's usually alcohol flowing throughout in the audience and all. And yeah, I would say as far as your question of does it lay a solid groundwork to have started in New York? I would say yes, because being a gig musician for a number of years in New York has prepared me for any context because there's just, all these people from all over the world are in the audience of the shows that I do in New York. And I really have had to learn how to change on the fly and to be flexible. And like someone, it's their birthday and they run up and they're like, oh, sing happy birthday to me. And then we sing to them or with them, so then going to all these different places, there wasn't really much unexpected that happened because I've experienced so much in New York, but definitely there were different energies that I had to adapt to in the different cities.
And that makes sense. And as you were describing it, so you had several different musicians in each city that you would kind of hook your wagon to. Do you have a say in who those players are, or is that something management takes care of, or the venue? How does that work?
So I don't have a manager. So I booked this tour. I did this completely as an independent artist, and I'm very open to building my team in the next phase. But no, I have my New York players that I've played with for years. In Texas, I came here in May and I did a couple shows in Austin. And from there, I just had a few friends that are also musicians here, word of mouth. They set me up with some players. And I just really, very luckily loved them. So that was that. In Northern California, I met this angel human being at South by Southwest named Ty, who he lives in Northern California, and he was very excited about helping me with the Northern California leg of my tour. So he found a bassist and a drummer that he thought were phenomenal, and he just kind of convinced them, you should play with this girl. And I mean, Bo and Adam are, shout out to them because they're such good players. I mean, we did a morning show together in Sacramento and that's filmed and on my YouTube channel. And just the way that they played in that, it just shows everything. Like they are just so in the vibe and so cool too. And then my Nashville trio is wonderful because I know this group of people, we're all from the same hometown in New Jersey. And it's 4 friends from New Jersey that now live in Nashville. And actually, the 4 of us and my brother are part of a music collective called Hometown Music Group, where we record and write and put out songs mainly for commercial purposes, but we write about all different types of subjects and all different genres. So the trio in Nashville was these guys that I've known for decades, bassist Brett and piano player John. And we just had a lot of fun on the show. I mean, like, they do the song, but then you do the preview where you like wave to the camera or you dance or whatever. And we were just being so silly. It was a fun time.
That's a tremendous network. And you had just said something that I kind of wanted to go in the direction of. You're a songwriter, which obviously implies that you write your own music. So I think on your most recent album, music and lyrics are all credited to you.
Yep. I wrote all of the music and lyrics on my album.
Which is, in my opinion, super impressive. And one of the recent interviews that we did here at Harmony Talk was with a wonderful group of ladies named the String Queens. I don't know if you've heard of them. If you haven't, you have to check them out. But on their website, one of the things they do that is really unique for a musical group is that they actually have like a mission statement. And their mission statement was to create music experiences that inspire diverse audiences to love, hope, feel, and imagine. Now, when I was reading about you and looking at some of your socials and some of the things on the streaming services, you were saying earlier, even in this episode today, as we're recording this, that once you started to write on a more personal level, you kind of thought maybe things would take off a little bit. And in what I read, you say, although not listed per se as a mission, you include in your bio that you hope to give those who relate to your story space to feel and release emotional pain, and you hope to help others heal. Now, that is pretty heavy.
Yeah.
And when I read that, I thought, boy, that sounds like it's almost a little personal even. But if you could maybe explain to our listeners what that means and what your goal is and what you want to accomplish through your music, through the words you've shared in your spaces.
Yes. So the way that I wrote a lot of the songs on Questions was when I was in a very kind of hopeless emotional place. And the way that I got out of the emotional place was writing. And I was in this place because I was in a series of toxic relationships. And I also had a lot of uncertainty about my career. That's the song Back to My Life, where I'm saying, it's great to be in front of an audience. And then the next day you have bills to pay and your apartment's a mess. And that song, I was given an award for one of my songs that I wrote in the musical theater context. And there was a whole ceremony and a whole performance, and I felt on top of the world. And then the next morning I woke up and I just got this enormous bill. And I was just like, well, this could get me completely down. But I was just laughing at the contrast and the comedy of all of it. And that's how I wrote that song. But I guess I'm very much about how can I be of service to other people through my skill set? What can I do to help? Especially with the relationship piece, where there's a ton of people, especially a ton of women, that are in relationships that are either physically, very sadly, or emotionally manipulative, abusive. And in those situations, women and people can feel very alone and very isolated and very much like they can't talk about those experiences. So I was not in a physically abusive relationship, but I definitely felt just completely insecure and completely at a loss of how to find myself and how to find my sense of self-worth. And so writing these songs, I hope if you're someone who's in a completely isolated scenario, but you have your earphones and you have access to YouTube or Spotify and you find this music, then hearing that somebody else maybe had the experiences that you had can allow you to see, oh, I'm not alone in this. And also there's a way out. And I think also I just want to distinguish between this idea of, I know it's very heavy to talk about deep emotional experiences, but I think there is a difference between songs where you can kind of just, I hate the word wallow because it's a little judgmental, but the idea of just like, everything sucks and like, I'm just going to stay here forever versus what I try to do. I try to create direction and movement away from that. So acknowledging how you feel, but then saying, I will not feel this way forever and there's a way out. So that's my mission, I would say.
I would agree with you that music, maybe more than almost anything that I personally get involved with, is maybe more healing than anything, right? And I think at times music can be grabbed or the music that you're going to listen to on a particular day might be picked just because it has something to do with mood, right? So maybe like for you even, you're an accomplished artist and you're emerging and, you're trying to put something out there that people can connect to. But a lot of what people connect to, which I find maybe most fascinating about music, is the actual piece of connection. An audience, like when you grow an audience, I love that audience, the connection that they all have is the artist. And if the artist, like in your case, is something that you can relate to on a personal level, that you could turn to assist you, to learn from, to know that you're not alone, that's really powerful. So the mission for you as an artist, not just to have a song that's catchy and appealing, but also when you're done listening, there's going to be great value and maybe something that you learned or can relate to. I think that's really, really commendable. So congratulations on that.
Thank you. And that's where this album, the theme is relationships and unsure path. But in my future work, which I've already written many songs for future albums. I just have to get to the stage of being able to record and produce them. It's more, I still am drawn to this concept of healing, but there's many ways that we need to heal. I mean, especially in today's just social, cultural, political climate, there's just so much division. And my thought to that is that there just needs to be healing. Like people just need to feel better so that they can act more kindly and be able to give more and connect more rather than judge and separate more.
Well, I think your music is definitely the type of music that could continue and move the needle and foster exactly what you just described as your goal. And with that being your goal, where do you see yourself 5 years from now, artistically, professionally, personally? I mean, what's the hope? What are we looking to accomplish here?
So 5 years from now, I would like to take what I have already started and just keep growing it and keep scaling it. So doing my tour was, I feel, the last part of the career that I had to physically do to know that I can do it and that I love doing all parts of it. Because being a singer-songwriter, there's so many different stages: the writing stage, the recording, producing, the releasing, the promoting, and the touring. That's all part of it. And honestly, I would just like to keep doing that with more albums and more tours in more places and on a bigger scale. And even all the interviews and the TV appearances that I did, I would love to keep scaling those up and doing them in platforms that have a wider reach. And something else I did this summer, which I really loved, I sang the national anthem at the A's Braves game in Sacramento.
How exciting.
Yeah, it was pretty awesome. And I really love singing the national anthem. It's something I did when I was little also. When I was 11, I sang for the Philadelphia 76ers. So Pennsylvania. And yeah, I mean, in the next 5 years, oh my gosh, it would be a dream if I could sing the national anthem like at the Super Bowl. I mean, that would be the ultimate.
It is one of the hardest songs to sing.
Yes.
So kudos to you to not only be able to do it, but to love to do it. Now, if you think back from what we've discussed here, you started on the theater side of things, and then you started to transition a little more to, the jazz clubs. And now here you are coming off of your first tour, and nothing that you experienced on that tour moved you in a direction of thinking, boy, I'm not sure if I want to do this. I think the opposite sounds like it happened. It confirmed for you that I found it. This is who I am, and this is what I want to do.
Yeah, I mean, there were many moments on this tour where I was able to connect with and I think become a bit of a role model for young girls, like girls under the age of 12. I was doing a whole dance on social media with one of my songs, Body of Gold, and I was able to do that with a few younger girls. And there was some performances I did where there were younger kids in the audience and they would come up to me after and I don't necessarily want to make people think that they have to do what I do in order to live their dream. I sort of feel that the whole role model mentorship model of people that, especially artists, it's not really at the forefront so much anymore. And maybe that's a sweeping statement, but I don't know. Like, I feel like a lot of my role models are people that are from way earlier times. And not to say that the people that have a lot of say today, there's a lot of good people, wonderful. I mean, Taylor Swift is honestly a wonderful role model for a lot of young girls, but I
I
think,
would agree.
yeah, I think what I would like to do, in addition to healing on a more adult level of adult topics, just allowing young people to be able to look up to someone and say, that's the type of person I want to be. There was one point on the tour where there was this little girl that I kind of danced with while I was on stage. And then she ran up to her mom and dad and was like, Mom, I want to be a musician when I grow up. And they started crying, like they were hysterical. And it's like, again, it's not even about that. Like, it doesn't really matter if she becomes a musician or not. It's the fact that she saw what I was doing and how I was interacting with her. And she thought, I want to do that same thing. That was so special. So that's another big reason I feel strongly about this path.
In a world where a lot of young people don't have role models or situations where a household is functioning in a way where it's not dysfunctional, and young children are looking for something like we were just talking about, something to be connected to, something to attach to. And in this case, if a young girl is connecting to Izze Stein and it maybe starts on the admiration and love of your music, but on the back end of that, there's a wonderful person that can guide them a little bit, it sounds like a big win to me. And what a wonderful thing for young people to know that there's somebody that they can look up to. So I have to tell you, I think, of all the things we discussed today, it's one of the most important messages I think you've shared, that it's not just about the music, it's about being a good person. And that's just as important to you.
Yes. I mean, a lot of the influences that young people have today is social media. And it's like what goes viral is not necessarily the person who's the best person. It's the craziest thing or the most outrageous or the most, disgusting. And it's just like, if you have that as your guiding light, like what kind of person does that create at the end of the day, if that's what you're intaking all the time? So I appreciate that.
It's a very powerful message. Now, let me ask you, just to kind of wrap it up here, you're talking about young people. So this is a great segue into my last thought for you is, what advice would you have for aspiring musicians? What would you suggest to them they need to know moving into that world?
I would say listening to every genre, not just listening to the things you like over and over again. Having your favorites, but also continuing to stretch because you never really know. I feel that the most eclectic artists are the ones that have the most random of influences. And that was advice that one of my college professors gave me was listen to everything. And then I would say exploring everything because there's honestly a lot of different aspects of the music industry that people don't know about, but allow people to create careers in music. I mean, what I do is probably it's the one that people see the most, the touring performer, the one who puts the music on Spotify. But, there's audio engineers and there's tour managers and there's people that create music specifically for commercials and there's session musicians and there's even people that create music blogs. Like there's a lot of ways to be a part of music is someone's passion. There's a lot of entry points other than just performing and, being the one who is in the center of it all. Like, honestly, I wouldn't be able to do what I do without a lot of the people that do the other jobs. it took me a bit to figure out exactly what niche of my dream was really my dream. And so the more that young people can try different things and see which one connects the deepest with them, the more they're probably going to be able to live a more fulfilling and purposeful life. That's what I would say.
No, that's great advice for our young listeners. And maybe just to close, you talked earlier about some of your influences early on, and even in the last few minutes here, you discussed how some of them are like older artists that, you look up to. But you talked also about having young people know to kind of spread it around a little bit and explore different genres. What would our listeners be surprised to find on your playlist? Like, what's the one maybe little guilty pleasure that somebody might say, wow, I wouldn't have expected that to be on the playlist?
I'm obsessed with yacht rock.
Okay.
Like
Yeah.
Michael McDonald, Christopher Cross, Kenny Loggins, like all those guys, I get chills whenever their songs come. And yeah, I know, I actually watched a documentary on yacht rock recently, and I know it's kind of become a bit of a meme, but I'm like, a lot of the best songs are yacht rock guys, and I hope to continue that legacy somehow, especially with my future work.
That's great. When in the mood, reach for yacht rock. I think that's awesome.
Legit,
yeah, absolutely. Now, listen, thank you so much. We can't thank you enough here at Harmony Talk for taking part in this today. It's been an absolute pleasure to speak with you. And folks, I've been talking with singer-songwriter Izze Stein. To learn more about Izze, please visit her website at izzestein.com, where you will also find dates for upcoming shows. You can also find Izze on her socials at Izze Stein. I encourage you to check out her 2025 album, Questions. Izze, thank you again. This has been Harmony Talk by A.M. Skyer, a third-generation family insurance business started in 1920. I'm Greg Frigoletto. Thank you to Izze for being with us today. To our listeners, continue to dream and keep doing.